Welcome, welcome to Torah Unleashed here at Olive Tree Fellowship, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We want to welcome every one of you that are here in our teaching center and those of you that are coming in through our YouTube channel, Torah Unleashed. And we would like to encourage everyone in our teaching center and those of you that are coming in to please share these videos and these teachings with family and friends. And please like each one so that we could go further and be able to reach more homes. Today, as we want to welcome you, we are in our 44th parashah, Devarim. Now, Devarim is the name of the book and the name of the parashah. And the word Devarim is the word words. Davar, chadavar is the word. Davar means to speak, to say a word, a thing, a matter, una cosa. And Devarim with the im at the end makes it plural. Davar, Devarim, words. By the way, the Greek word for Devar is logos, the logos. So in John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the word. And in Hebrew, it would be Breshit Chaya Chadavar. In the beginning was the word. And of course, the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim. And the greatest gift that we have is that the word became flesh and he tabernacled among us. And so we love the Logos, the word, Yeshua, made flesh, the eternal word of Elohim. Well, here in Deuteronomy, let's go to verse 1. These are the words spoken beyond the Jordan to the whole of Israel. These are the words that were spoken. Now, this is the fifth book. That's why we call it the Pentateuch. The word Pentateuch means the 5 books. The Torah is made up of a Pentateuch of 5 books. And it covers numbers 1 to 322. By the way, in 322, it is actually in the Hebrew word structure paragraph in the middle of a paragraph. And so when Maimonides cut this, he just cut it in the middle of a paragraph. And so this first parashah is 3.5 chapters long. The name for it means, again, words. The ancient name of the book of Devarim is Mishnah HaTorah. The word Mishneh or Mishnah for the book called the Mishnah means repetition. So the book of Devarim from the Greek source is to repeat. Of course, the Greek word, the Septuagint Greek word is second la. Duro is the word for number 2 or second. And nomos is law. It is the Greek Septuagint that translated the word Torah into nomos, into law. And in a sense, that's where a tipping started, where at that time a nomos was not just what we would call a law today. Because remember, in Hebrew, we have other words for law. We have mishpatim, we have hukim. And so mishpatim and hukim are the Hebrew words for law. Now, the Hebrew word for teaching or instruction is Torah. So Torah and law in Hebrew are not together. In Greek, they kind of put them together. And so to us today, there's that confusion because people say, well, we're not under the law. We're not under Torah. We're under Torah, but those laws or mishpatim hukim can only be applied at certain times and in certain places. And sometimes people get confused because, for example, we don't have a king right now. So all the laws, all the mishpatim and hukim that have to do with a king and that type of authority is gone. We don't have a high priest. We don't have any priests. We don't have a temple. So all the mishpatim and hukim, all the laws, statutes, decrees, or however King James or other English Bibles translate them in English, those are not applicable today because we don't have a temple. In fact, much of what we would call the mishpatim and hukim of the Torah cannot be applied today without a king, without the kohanim, without the kahuna, and that we talked about last time. Without the kahuna, you can't do much of anything that has to do with the temple, sacrifices, with the rituals. And so when we talk about Torah, the instructions, we're talking mostly about behavior, moral behavior. We're talking about practices that have to do with what he told us to do to the best of our ability. For example, we have Pesach. Pesach is a teaching that we follow, but we cannot do Pesach as we should and we must biblically because we don't have a temple. The last true Passover was in 70 AD. Since 70 AD, our people have not been able to sacrifice the Pesach, the Korban Pesach. And so we do a Passover Seder, a remembrance of the Passover. And to me, this is really a Holy Spirit thing and a proof that Yeshua is not only a priest and a king, but he's the great prophet, our great prophet, is that Yeshua knowing, look at this, Yeshua knowing and saying at the Passover and even before to the people when he came into Jerusalem that the temple was going to be destroyed, not one stone was going to be standing upon another. Knowing that there was going to be the end of a sacrificial system, notice that Yeshua did not take a piece of lamb, a piece of the Korban Pesach, which was always taken, and he didn't take it and do the blessing on the piece. It was supposed to be the size of an olive that everybody in the family took, and they would bless the Korban Pesach, and they would have communion with the Korban Pesach. They would have communion with the bread, with the matzah. They would have communion with the maror. And these three things they would have communion with at Passover. But notice that Yeshua did not take the lamb. Yeshua took the bread. And he used the bread and said, as often as you eat this, as often as you drink this, he took the bread and the cup, knowing that the sacrificial system was going to end. And at that point, what we would call a Seder, or what Paul calls the koinonia. The koinonia. A koinonia supper is where you eat a communion. And he says there in 1 Corinthians 10, when we eat this is a communion with the body of Messiah, and we drink this is a communion with the blood of Messiah. And he uses that term communion, koinonia, for Pesach. Interestingly enough, after the temple was destroyed, and to this day, the Jewish community, the rabbinic Jewish community, follows what Yeshua did. They have taken Yeshua's afikomen. They have taken Yeshua's third cup, and they've applied it to what is now considered the Haggadah or the Seder. But it was Yeshua who implemented these things. And I don't know how I got to there from the book of Deuteronomy, but I guess somebody needed to hear that. But anyways, the book of Deuteronomy, Greek means second law, and it should not be second law. It should be a repetition of the Torah, which is what the book of Deuteronomy really is. It repeats the Torah. And we're going to see some things of this book. The book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, takes place in maybe a 3-4 week period. It's the last, what we would call the last month of the life of Moses. And the book of Deuteronomy happens in this last month. And it's 3 addresses or 3 sermons, 3 teachings. Today we begin with what we would call a historical overview. He does a historical overview of everything from the Exodus, from leaving Sinai to this day. He's already been told that he's not going to go into the promised land. He's already been told that he is going to go home with Adonai, as with Aaron and Miriam. And so he already is what we would call a dead man walking. He already is, he's gotten the news that he's not going to be here much longer. And so he gives this historical overview. The second address, what is called theologically the Deuteronomic Code, he gives more mitzvot, more commandments, mishpatim and chukim. This is where he outlines all these laws. Remember, mitzvot, mishpatim and chukim are laws, decrees, statutes, judgments that are translated as such in English Bibles. And he outlines how they should live. And the third address is his last words, his acts, an overview of his life. And then he dies, and the burial of Moses. When we get to the end of Deuteronomy, and we'll talk about the burial of Moses and his death. And so this is the outline of the book of Deuteronomy. There are 9 outline topics or themes in the book of Deuteronomy. It's time and place, when and where this takes place, the final instructions at Horeb, Kadesh. The Israelites lose faith. Remember, he gives a story. He's going back historically, saying, we blew it. We lost faith. When they got to Kadesh Barnea, they sent the spies to reconnoiter the land, and then more instructions, relation with Edom and Moab, and then they wander for 39 years. Think of it. The wandering was for 39 years. It was 40 years and 11 months that it takes place over here. And so they wander for 40 years, and now they come back and to enter the land. So everything that takes place in the book of Deuteronomy takes place in Moab, across from what was Jericho, and it is from that vantage point that Moses is instructing the leaders of Israel, and he tells these stories. And then we end up there with some of his last instructions. So this is what, and again, we're not going to go through all of these, but we'll hit some of these today as we can. But I want to talk a little bit about the kahal in the wilderness. The kahal in the wilderness. The last 40 years have just occurred. 40 years of life in the wilderness has just occurred. Now we come to go into the promised land. What was the kahal in the wilderness? Who was the kahal in the wilderness? What is the kahal? The word kahal, as we're going to see, means an assembly. The word kahal means an assembly of people that have been called. To kahal means to call. And this is the people of Elohim. Now, I'm going to share some things that are very, very controversial in the body of Messiah. Among especially Rabbinic Judaism and Catholic Protestant Christianity, or the Christianities and the Judaisms out there, because there's so many, especially the Christianities, there's so many eschatological theories and theologies on the last days. How is Yeshua coming back? Who is Yeshua? And part of that discussion deals with the study of the church. What is the church? And there are some, in fact, one of the main, probably most Christians, every Christian that has grown up, especially in evangelical circles, probably were dispensationalists. The dispensational system, and what the dispensational system does, it divides Israel and the church. Israel and the church are two different bodies. And in dispensationalism, the church, right now we're in what they call the church age. And before that was the law. Well, now the law's been done away with, so now we're in the church age. But then Yeshua's coming back and he's going to rapture the church out. And when he raptures the church out, then all of a sudden Israel's going to be left holding a bag and they are going to be judged by Adonai. That's dispensationalism in a nutshell. But there's other different types of studies, replacement theology, which says that the first form of dispensationalist theology, which is the Catholic form, Roman Catholic form, is that the Roman Church replaced Israel, that it's a replacement of Israel. Of course, when other churches came in, the Lutherans and Reformed, and up to today, the thousands of Christian denominations, and some of them, the Mormons have replaced Israel, or the Jehovah's Witnesses have replaced Israel. And so replacement theology is very big in a lot of congregations. Of course, in Rabbinic Judaism has replaced Israel. I'm going to stop so you could think about that one for a second. Rabbinic Judaism has replaced Israel. Rabbinic Judaism has replaced Torah. The Mishnah, the Talmud has replaced Torah in many instances. And so the Torah has been replaced in both sides of the aisle. The Christianities and the Judaisms out there has replaced Israel and Torah. And both of these groups have replaced the Kahal. They replaced the kahal. What is the kahal? There was a kahal in the wilderness. There was an assembly in the wilderness. What was this assembly? This was the people of Elohim. The assembly, the kahal, are the people of Elohim of all time, past, present, and future. Let me make that declaration. The kahal, the people of Elohim, are those that had faith, those that have faith, and those that will have faith. How many of you consider yourself a people of Elohim? We all do. I am. I am a person of Elohim. I belong to him. You belong to him. How many of you believe that Abraham was a people of Elohim? Yeah. David was a people of Elohim. The ones that had faith. In the book of Hebrews, there is the hall of faith. Hebrews 11, the hall of faith. All those had faith. Salvation is by grace through faith, and they all had faith. And Adonai gave them grace. And they responded by faith. And they are what we considered saved. The righteous shall live by faith. And so faith is what gives us righteousness, unmerited favor through grace. Well, today, we believers, every person baptized into Yeshua, is the people of Elohim. Every born-again person is a people of Elohim. So there was the people of Elohim in the wilderness. Yeshua came and the apostles were the people of Elohim. Paul was a people of Elohim. I'm a people of Elohim. And those in our future, our descendants, those that will believe until actually through Yeshua's coming and into the millennium, are the people of Elohim. Adonai only has one people, and those are those that respond by faith to his grace in the shed blood of Messiah today. Let's look at this kahal in the wilderness. Because what Moses is going to do, he's going to give a history of the kahal in the wilderness. Well, what is the kahal in the wilderness? It's those people of faith that believed. By the way, there was a lot of people that were, quote, excommunicated, apostates, and many of them died in that apostasy, and they were not people of Elohim. They were among the people of Elohim, but without faith, you could be among the people of Elohim, and just because a person comes to church or is part of a congregation or is even baptized or, and does, ritual things, that doesn't mean that that person has saving faith. Doesn't mean he has saving faith. Just like if you were born in a garage doesn't make you a car. So just because you were born into a congregation, I was born a Catholic, I'll die a Catholic. I was born a Baptist, I'm going to die a Baptist. Or whatever. No. We must be born again. And we are born into the kahal, into the assembly. We're born again into the assembly. And we are part of that assembly. Let's look at this verse. Or these two verses, the kahal. The word kahal is translated in the Greek Septuagint. Now, again, the Greek Septuagint is the Jewish Greek translation, the Jewish Greek translation from Hebrew to Greek about 200 years before Yeshua. The Greek, what people call the Old Testament, in its Greek form is not a Christian thing. It is a Jewish thing. 70 Jewish scholars translated about 200 years before Yeshua. part of the original Hebrew Tanakh, Old Testament. They translated only the Torah at first, and later on they translated the rest of it. But they translated it into Greek. This is known as the Septuagint, the 70. It was 70 scholars. That's why we have these words Deuteronomy, Pentateuch, the 5 books. Those are all Greek terms. And so the word kahal, and I want you to see it right here. Here is the word kahal, kof, hey, lamed, kahal, over here. Now the King James translates it as the congregation of the Lord. The congregation, kahal Yahweh in Hebrew, but congregation of the Lord. The New American Standard, or the NAS, I don't know which one that is. It's not the New American Standard. Translates it as the assembly of the Lord. And the New Jerusalem Bible translated as Yahweh's community. But the Greek New Testament, of which the Greek Septuagint translated it as synagogein, kuriou. Synagogue is where we get the word synagogue in English. So the word kahal, which is this one right here, kahal Yahweh, is actually translated as synagogue in the Greek Septuagint. Now, the term kahal Israel, here's the word kahal Israel, and I just got these, there's several hundred examples in the Tanakh, but I just got 2 of them. This is actually translated in the King James as Congregation of Israel, in the NAS as Assembly of Israel, in the Jerusalem Bible also as Assembly of Israel, but in the Septuagint it is translated as Ecclesias Israel. So this is where we get the word ecclesia, or in Spanish, iglesia. And of course, the Hebrew word is kol kahal Israel, all the assembly of Israel, and over here unto the assembly of Yahweh. And so the word kahal in Tanakh, and of course, for those of you that might be new, the word Tanakh means the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, which was the threefold division of what the Catholics call the Old Testament, and the Protestants too call the Old Testament. But it is made up in Hebrew, as Yeshua says in Luke 24, of 3 parts. And Yeshua is all over, as he says, opens up after his resurrection, Moses and the prophets and the writings. And so this is what the kahal was. The word kahal is all over, especially the Torah. It's all over the kahal in the wilderness. The kahal moved. Moses spoke to the kahal. Everything is kahal in the wilderness. These are the people of Elohim. These are the people that believed. These were the ones that had faith. The ones that didn't have faith always grumbled, always came against Moses. They were out there in the corners. But the people of faith are the kahal. I'm emphasizing this because of identity. We need to know our identity as believers. I want you to know your identity. It's not them and us. It's not the people of Elohim in the Torah. It's not the Israelites in the wilderness. It's not them, and it's us today. No, Adonai only has one people. Adonai only has one people, and that's those people of faith. Those people that put their faith in Him. of every generation, of any generation, any person that puts his faith, like in Isaiah 61, the eunuch who puts his faith, the foreigner who follows Shabbat and decides, I will make him, into my house. And so we are that house of Elohim. We are that people all together. When Adonai looks from generation to generation, and from the faith of Abraham, even the faith of Adam when he received the clothing that would clothe him, the faith of Noah, excuse me, the faith of Noah, the faith of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, the faith of David, the faith of the faith. Any person of faith is a people of Elohim, and they're part of the kahal, they're part of the assembly. Go with me to Acts 7:38. And this is Stephen. Stephen, when he was preaching to the people, he also was giving a historical summary of the people of Elohim. And excuse me. And that's why they stoned him, because he was giving this summary. And he says about Moses, he's talking about Moses, and he says, this is he, talking about Moses, this is he that was in, the King James uses the word, the church in the wilderness. The King James, and through the King James, the word church has become very prominent in the whole world for buildings and for assemblies, for denominations. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give unto us. This is what the King James says. This is what the King James says. That it was he, Moses, in the church in the wilderness. Now, this is, by the way, my translation. And this next one is my translation. He established the assembly in the desert. It was he who was with our ancestors, and the messenger who had spoken to him on Mount Sinai. It was he who was entrusted with the words of life to hand to us. Now, again, I translate this not with the word church. In fact, we need to get the word church out of our assembly. We need to get the term church out. Church. Get it out of our minds. It's going to be hard. Sometimes I even use the word myself. I've been trying to get that word out, that term. The better term is assembly. The called out assembly, the called out body. He established. And the word there is established because here in Greek, in the Greek New Testament, hutos esten ho genomenos. The word genomenos means to establish, to initiate, to start, to have. And he uses the term te ecclesia. This is the term that the Jewish people, now let's understand this, very, very important. By 200 AD, a great majority of the Jewish people were no longer speaking Hebrew. Many of them were no longer even speaking Aramaic, which was the language they learned while in the 70 years in Babylon. When they came back from Babylon, they came back speaking Aramaic. But around the year 300, Alexander the Great became the most influential person, culture, way of life for the whole world. He brought what was called Hellenization. He Hellenized. Helena, meaning Greek, the Greek language, the Greek culture, the Greek sports, the Greek political system. The polis is the Greek city-state, where we get the word police or metropolitis and all these words with polis in it. It's a Greek, meaning the city and the city-state, the culture, the Olympics. You know, the Olympics are pagan. I have not participated in watching the Olympics for many, many years because the Olympics are pagan. They're Hellenism. And the Greco-Roman world adopted all this way of life. And Christianity, sad to say, Christianity has become a disciple of the Greco-Roman way of life today. And so many Christians are Greco-Romans. They're more Greco-Romans than they are Hebraic. We need to return back to our Hebraic culture. But we are Greco-Roman people. And so because of Alexander the Great, many, many Jews started speaking Greek, and Greek became one of the lingua francas of the time. And so one of the things that we know is that the Septuagint was the result of that. And so now we have the term ecclesia, which is a Greek term. The word ecclesia in Greek means the calling out. You know, when we elect our representatives, our senators, and they go to Washington, that is an assembly. The Senate and the House of Representatives are assemblies. And it's ecclesia. Those are ecclesias in Greek. The Athenians would call their senators, their people, they'd call them, and they'd meet there in Athens. They'd call them from all over the little city-states, and they'd meet. And that was an ecclesia. That was a body, an assembly of people. And the Septuagint used the word ecclesia. They also use synagoga, but more importantly, they use, by the way, the word synagogue is used several times. You know where it says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them? In the Greek New Testament, Yeshua is actually saying, where 2 or 3 synagogue with me, there I am in the midst of them. And a lot of people say, well, the synagogue is Jewish. Yeah, the ecclesia, that's Christian. No, the ecclesia is actually Greek for a political body. By the way, in the Greek New Testament, in the book of Acts, the word ecclesia is used for a mob. People were mobbing Paul, and it uses the ecclesia for mob. It's a group of people. Could be a ruling people or a unruly people, but it's a group of people. Now, what's interesting here is that Stephen is talking about the kahal. Watch what he says over here. Be kahal, in the kahal u bamidbar. By the way, that's bamidbar. The book of Numbers is called bamidbar, in the wilderness. And so the kahal in the wilderness. He also uses it, that's the Greek translation, by the way. The actual Greek is ecclesia, en erem oi. And so the word ecclesia is the body of Israelites in the wilderness. Stephen calls them the ecclesia. Now, interestingly enough, the translators of the King James translated it as the word church. The only thing I have to counter that is I wish they would have translated every time that the word ecclesia is used in the Tanakh, that they should have translated those with the word church. They weren't consistent. They were only consistent in certain areas, but they were not consistent in all areas. There was a church in the wilderness. There wasn't an ecclesia. There was a kahal. They were the people of faith. Now, it's important for us to know that in Matthew 16:18, this is Yeshua talking now. And I say unto thee, thou art Peter, again, King James, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now, in the Greek, kago de soy lego, I say unto you, thou art Petros, thou art Peter. Here's Petros, Peter. And kai epitaute te Petra, and upon this rock, you are the stone, but upon this Petra, this rock, I will build my church. Now, watch what it says over here. This Greek word here, oikodomeso, this word oikodomeso means to rebuild and restore. Now, in the King James, it says, I will build my church. That's a good translation. But the word oikodomeso primarily means to rebuild or to restore. Did Yeshua start again? Did Yeshua get the people of Elohim of faith and say, okay, done, it's over, hasta la vista. Now I'm going to build my new church. That church over there is gone. Now my church. No. Yeshua did not come to build something new. The new covenant is not a brand new covenant. It's a restored covenant. He restored the covenant. He renewed the covenant. We follow a renewed covenant. We follow a renewed ecclesia, kahal. By the way, the word you are Petros, and on this Petra I will rebuild my assembly, and the gates of the grave, which is what the word hell means, by the way. Hell does not mean the lake of fire. A lot of people put hell and the lake of fire together. Hell means the grave. The lake of fire is in the future. No one is in hell yet. No one is in the lake of fire yet. But when people die, everyone goes to the grave. But one of the things that we could say here, and watch what Yeshua says in Hebrew, this would be evana, from bana, to build, to rebuild. Et kehilati. Kehilati is my kehilah. He's going to rebuild my kahal. And that's from the word kahal, the called out body, the assembly. And of course, in the Greek, it's ecclesia. Yeshua did not do away with the old to bring in the new. Yeshua continued the people of Elohim. And remember the illustration of the olive tree. The illustration of the olive tree is Jeremiah 11, 15 and 16 says, the olive tree well planted and green is my name for Israel. Yahweh's name for Israel, there in Jeremiah 11, 15 and 16, is my olive tree. Paul, in Romans 11, 16, interestingly enough, same numbers, says that some of the branches were cut off. In Jeremiah, it says those branches that are cut off are because of unbelief, because of sin. But what Paul says is some, not all the branches, some of the branches were cut off. And the Gentiles were grafted in among the rest of the branches, the ones that were left. What were the branches that were left? Well, there was much unbelief in the first century. But there was believers. There was, when Yeshua was born, there was Zechariah. There was Elizabeth. There was Joseph, Mary. There was Hannah. There was Simeon. There was other people, other believers. It wasn't total unbelief. There were believers. Now, most of them died off, but watch this. Mary had a little lamb. Mary had Yeshua. And Yeshua, after all believers died, Yeshua became the branch. Yeshua became the netzer. Yeshua became the real Israel. Let me tell you, Yeshua is the real Israel. Yeshua is Israel. He is the promise. The land belongs to him. He is the seed. And Yeshua came to some of these dead branches, some of these branches that had been cut off. And he came to one branch called Peter. Follow me. And Peter was regrafted to Yeshua, who is the netzer of Israel. And then John, James, all these were grafted into Yeshua. And Yeshua started his kehilah, his kahal, his assembly, his ecclesia. And it grew to 70. It grew to 120. After Pentecost, it grew 3,000 and then 5,000. And then many priests were gathered unto Yeshua. And Yeshua continued. He didn't destroy the old tree and start a new tree. Remember, the Gentiles, Cornelius was grafted into the Israelite, the people of Elohim, the assembly, the ecclesia. The ecclesia of Yeshua is this assembly that was in the wilderness, that continued by those who continued in faith. If you didn't have faith, in fact, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they weren't part of the people of Elohim. They were of their father, the devil. They were not part. Yeshua's disciples are the continuation. See, that's our identity. That's your identity. They are the continuation of the Kehillah in the wilderness, of what is over here. And Yeshua rebuilt it. He didn't build it from scratch. He rebuilt it from the true Israel with the Torah, with the prophets. That's why we still are Mosaic. We follow Torah. We follow the prophets. We follow the writings. We continue with that. We don't give it up. Where does the word church come from? The English word church actually comes from the word circle. It means a circle. Something that goes around. Again, these are Dutch and German words, but now remember, it is the King James Bible that brought in, and through, by that time, European nations brought the word church into the English-speaking vocabulary. And if you look, most people say church is a translation of the word ecclesia. No, it's not. A translation of the word ecclesia should be assembly. Church is a substitution for the word assembly, which is the translation of the word ecclesia, or kahal, the kehillah, the people of Elohim. Today, the kehillah, the assembly, is the people of Elohim. And today, and this is the good news, this is good news, this is gospel, it is not just for Israelites no more. It is not just for Jewish people no more. Can you imagine? The Gentiles can be part of the ecclesia of the kahal, the people of Elohim. You know, a lot of people today say, can Jews become Christians? That's strange. How could Jews become Christians? But in the first century, it was, can Gentiles become believers? How? Gentiles? You know, when Cornelius was said, and Peter goes back to the assembly in Jerusalem, everybody's surprised. What? A dog becomes a Christian? Because remember, that's what they called the Gentiles. Can dogs become believers? Of course, they didn't use the word Christian because that was a term that was only used by Gentiles for the believing community of Messianics at the first place, because again, they spoke in Greek. And by the way, the word Christianity is not found in the scriptures. The word Christianity came in the Middle Ages for those that are followers of Christ, or those who call themselves Christians. By that time, it had grown. Okay, now we're back to Deuteronomy, and I lost my time. These are the words spoken beyond the Jordan to the whole of Israel in the wilderness, in the Arava. Now watch in verse 2. It is 11 days' march from Horeb, which is Mount Sinai, by way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Okay, so think of this. You leave Egypt. It takes 3 months to go from Egypt to Sinai. 3 months to go from Egypt to Sinai. We are told in the 3rd month to the very day, they reach Sinai. They're in Sinai for 1 year. They leave Sinai and they head to the promised land, and it takes 11 days. They get to the edge of the bottom of the Arava, which is south of Beersheba today, and they get there, and they're going to go into the land. But they decide to send messengers to reconnoiter the land, so they go up, 12 men go up, 10 come with a bad report, 2 come with a good report, and Adonai is angry for their lack of faith. And because of that, he says, you know what? It took you guys 40 days to get out there. These 12 men, 40 days to get out there. Now, you're going to be, again, 40 years, a day, a year for a day for your unbelief, and you're going to be wandering in the desert for 40 years. And they wander in the desert for 40 years. And here in Deuteronomy, now, after 40 years of going around in circles, all of a sudden, they are ready to cross over a 39, 40-year wandering. Egypt to the crossing of the sea. They go from Egypt they cross the sea, and they cross from the crossing of the sea to Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai for 1 year, they receive the 10 Commandments, receive Mishpatim, Chukim. They set up the tabernacle. That's what the book of Exodus is all about. It's chronological, but from the setting up of the tabernacle to the second Passover is what the book of Leviticus, it's what I call a parentheses book. It's Levitical laws that have to do pretty much with the tabernacle. And then the book of Numbers covers from the second Passover. They prepared to leave Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea the second year. They sent out the 12 spies and then spent 39 years wandering, which is what the book of Numbers goes through. But the book of Numbers does not. There is a sixth book that we don't know about. What happened from the time they left Kadesh Barnea to the time they returned to Kadesh Barnea for those 39 years? What happened in those 39 years? We don't know. We don't have a record of what happened for 39 years. What happened before this and after this is recorded in the book of Numbers. But what happened in those intervening 39 years of going around in circles? That's not recorded. The only thing that's recorded is the stopping points where they stopped and left and stopped and left. 42 places. But what happened in between? We don't know. And then they returned to Kadesh Barnea. Remember, there was water from the rock a second time. Miriam and Aaron die. And then they go from Kadesh to the plains of Moab. And that's what the book of Deuteronomy is. Another parentheses book. So this kind of gives you a bird's eye view of from Egypt to 40 years later, now in the wilderness. And here's the journey. Israel in the plains of Moab, here's where they are now. And they're ready to cross. Here's Mount Nebo. Here's where Moses is going to go home to be with Adonai. And when we say Moses went home with Adonai, we're talking about literally he went home to be with Adonai. Moses didn't die and was buried. Elohim, it says, buried him. But where did he bury him? He buried him in eternity. Because the body of Moses, the corpse of Moses, his physical corpse, was actually taken by Michael and taken into eternity. And Moses is in eternity. And remember, Moses came down with Elijah in the transfiguration of Yeshua, which means that Moses did not die. Moses is alive in eternity and has his resurrected body, or else he wouldn't have been able to transfigure with Elijah, who also was taken up when it came time for him to go to be with Adonai along with Enoch earlier. But this is kind of like the 40th year, the 11th month, the first day. And so they're ready to go in. Here's a geography that mentions it over here in the first chapter. The highlands, the Arava, and the highlands west, the lowlands, the Shephelah, the Negev, and the coastlands. One of the things that I teach in one of our Wednesday night classes is every so often I do a geography class, because I believe that every one of you should know biblical geography. Every one of you men, one of the books that you should have is a Bible atlas. If you don't have a Bible atlas and you're a male, you need to have a Bible atlas, man, so that when you read, you could go to your Bible atlas, and some of the ones even show you how they go. Ay, ay, ay. From the rivers to the sea, Israel will always be. And this would take an hour in this one. Let's go ahead and stand. There's so much and so little time. Our Father, I thank you for who you are. But more importantly, for us, Father, for what you've done for us. How you loved us so much that you gave us your only begotten Son. Father, we love you so much because you first loved us. Thank you for including us, Jew, Gentile, male, female, rich and poor, into the people of Elohim, into your kingdom. Father, we bless you. And it's by your grace, because we don't deserve that. But you gave us everlasting life because we put our trust in your Son. Father, we love you. Yeverechecha Yahweh vayishmerecha. Air Yahweh panaverecha bichunecha. Asa Yahweh panavelecha. Vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you, be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the contents of his face upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom. Have a good week. And thank you.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or TorahUnleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.